And that is hayalim bodedim, lone soldiers. Those people who come to Israel from abroad to serve in the IDF, not people who've made aliyah already, but people who are coming to serve here. And that is that's what we're going to discuss. And we have a great we have a duo, actually. We have two guests speaking with us today. We have Marc Rosenberg, who's the VP of Diaspora Partnerships at Nefesh B'Nefesh, which many of you will know, I'm sure, is a non-profit organization that has been assisting Aliyah from North America and the UK. I myself benefited from them some 15 years ago. He's an experienced educator and collaborates with several educational institutions in Jerusalem. He's originally from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Today he lives in Jerusalem with his wife and 5 children. We also have with us Joshua Shushan, born in Freiburg, Germany. Excuse me. He moved to Israel in 2013. He enlisted in the IDF, where he served as a sergeant in the Golani Infantry Brigade. He's currently the team leader responsible for all lone soldiers from English-speaking countries at the Nefesh B'Nefesh Friends of the IDF Lone Soldiers Program. He has a master's in security and diplomacy from Tel Aviv University, and he continues to serve in the IDF Reserves. Mark and Josh, thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
You're muted. Yes. Okay. Josh, you're muted. Let's hear your voice.
Well, thank you, Paul, so much for that wonderful introduction, and really thank you all for joining this incredible Zoom tonight to learn a little bit more about this really incredible demographic that we have here in Israel, the lone soldiers. So thank you so much for the invite.
Okay, so let's start with a very basic question, and I'm assuming that many people on the Zoom won't know much about the Lone Soldiers Program and the people that come. So let's ask, first of all, who are these people? Can you give us some kind of breakdown of, firstly, how many people each year are doing this, where they're from? Let's start with that, where they're from, how many people are we talking about?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to define the term lone soldier. A lone soldier is basically somebody that serves in the IDF whose parents either don't live in Israel or they don't support them, they have no connection with them. So currently in the IDF, we have something around the number of about 7,000 lone soldiers, and 3,300 of this number from abroad. So that means that the rest of them are Israeli lone soldiers. They're Israelis either from Haredi families that decide to join the army and then are excommunicated from their families. They have no connection with them anymore, or possibly children from broken homes, from bad situations. So they have no support. So the Nefesh B'Nefesh FIDF Lone Soldiers Program, we focus on all of those who come from abroad, which is around 3,200 soldiers currently serving in active duty. And it's generally made up of, I would say, about 38% of the number come from North America, 40% come from Eastern Europe, and as well as we have lots of people coming from South America as well. The number is always increasing, and yeah, these are young people that decide that they want to come to Israel either to make Aliyah or simply just to join the army. And our program is here really to facilitate that, to assist them with the bureaucracy, with some of the hurdles of starting a new journey in a new country where possibly they don't speak the language very well, they don't understand the system. So really what we are here for is to assist them in acclimating to the country, to the culture, and also just to prepare them for their military service. Okay, and the I think we all have some sense of why people make Aliyah. There's different reasons, of course, but why would someone choose specifically? We're talking about also, are these all people of sort of military age in the Israeli context, sort of people who are 18, 19-year-olds, or are they of different ages? It also varies. If you arrive in Israel, if you come to Israel or decide to make Aliyah before you turn 22, you will have to serve in the military. Israel has a conscript army where every citizen has to join the army. And this applies as well to Olim that come under the age of 22 also must serve. Now we have lots of people that arrive after the age of 22 who also really want to serve. And there is the opportunity for them to volunteer to draft into the IDF. And the IDF allows this until the age of 28. So we very often have people that decided that they wanted to do their studies first in the US perhaps, and they arrive a little bit late. They arrive at age 25, 26. And this is a real dream of theirs. They've always wanted to join the army, but their parents wanted them to finish their studies first. And so this is something that we assist with. We help them, write their letters for the army and to really help them get into to achieve their dream of serving the IDF.
I want to add on to Josh by saying that indeed the Army changed its rules a few years ago and lowered the age for mandatory service to 22, which has been a great option for some people who do want to come on Aliyah, but they really, they started their career already and they're able to do it. If you are a physician, if you are a doctor, you have to be much older. It's almost 32 that you'll be, the IDF really needs doctors, so you will be pulled into service. But a commonality about people that are choosing to come has to do with some of their backgrounds. From North America, which is Nefesh B'Nefesh specialty regarding Aliyah, although our LSP IDF Lone Soldier Program serves lone soldiers from around the world, we see the essays of people and the applications of people who are making Aliyah under the age of 26, and about a third of them have an Israeli parent. So they grew up with some of the stories of serving in the IDF, although serving in the IDF is very different now that you have one of these, instead of waiting in long lines, the parents have of their stories. So some of them come up with that stories. Many of them come with the inspiration to serve after experience in Israel. Some come because they feel a sense of service in general, that they're fascinated by this idea. And there's even people who come that just say that, if this is part of the citizenship, I'll do what I have to do. Sometimes people are surprised. Only 10% of the IDF is combat, and another 10% is intelligence. So not everyone, and we'll talk about what lone soldiers prefer to do, but some people are relieved that they can come and either if they have a degree in engineering, they'll be able to maybe get into the engineering corps, or if they have a certain background, they'll be able to use that background for the IDF's benefit.
Okay, I should just say to our audience, please do write questions into the chat, because we're going to put some of your questions to Mark and Josh in about 20 minutes or so. Okay, so what if someone is coming from wherever they're coming from, the United States or Europe or wherever they're from, and they're joining the IDF as a lone soldier? Typically, I mean, unless perhaps they're one of these people who has an Israeli parent, they're not coming with Hebrew. So they're coming with a disadvantage, a big disadvantage already. How do they deal with that? And also, what other challenges typically do they encounter along with the language problem?
So neither of my parents are Israeli, and I came to Israel with literally 3 words: ken, lo, and falafel. That's like the only words that I spoke. And so what happens with 95% of hayalim, even those who speak a basic level of Hebrew, the first 3 months of their military service it takes place at a base in the north of Israel called Mikve Alon. And Mikve Alon is an educational base where the new recruits, they wear their uniforms, they're 100% soldiers in the IDF. They spend the first 3 weeks or so doing a 0-2 level basic training, which is learning how to apply first aid to an injured soldier, to the rifle ranges, to get basic marksmanship skills, and also Krav Maga. After this 3-week period, they spend about 7 to 8 weeks learning intensive Hebrew every single day from 8 in the morning until 7 at night, obviously with breaks in between. But really, the main focus of this base is really to teach the soldiers as much Hebrew to make them have a successful military service. Now, I spoke pretty good Hebrew after Mikve Alon. I really applied myself because it's something I really wanted to go far in the army. And after I finished my basic training, I was sent to the commander's course. So it really does work. It's a very good program. Obviously it depends on how much effort you put into it, but we have a lot of people, a lot of soldiers that I see going in with 0 Hebrew, and then after 3 months, when we visit them at their graduation ceremony, they're able to speak conversational Hebrew, and it's something extremely beautiful.
That's amazing. It sounds much more effective than the regular Ulpan. Most of us do.
It's definitely more effective, Paul. It's an interesting observation. I generally tell people a gift from the government of Israel to all Olim is 5 months of intensive Ulpan. But I warn people that joining an Ulpan is like joining a gym. You don't lose weight by just becoming a member or going there. You actually have to exercise. And what this base really does, it puts people in the deep end. And those people who want to do meaningful service realize that their performance in the Hebrew is going to help them be noticed and help them get to the places they want to go. So it really pushes people beyond their comfort zone, that they really have to, they visualize the goal of mastering Hebrew in an incentivized way that makes a difference. So maybe if they created a sort of basic training for Olim, the Olim level would be a little stronger.
It's a great point, because I think that what you're saying is that they're learning Hebrew in an environment in which their Hebrew is required then and there, and it needs to be utilized in the specific environment they're in, which is kind of different to most of us, especially English speakers, of course, because especially if you're in a big city like Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, you can get by in English so easily with most in many situations that there's less of an incentive. I think that's really interesting and important.
I want Josh to follow up on the second point as well, just from his also personal experience of the other needs. But I think that also one of the things that I think many hayalim bodedim lone soldiers have is this intrinsic motivation to make up for something that is lacking in them because they didn't grow up with all of the stories of the army or the mentality. I see that with my oldest is 18 and has begun the process, and for years we're learning about this. So this mentality that you have to overcome a learning gap motivates Olim to realize they have to stand out a little bit just to be able to get to an equal level of competition, whether it's just for units or performance or just to be sure that they're not left closing a base.
That makes sense. Josh, can you say more about the other challenges, the non-language challenges?
So obviously, there is oftentimes obviously the culture gap. You have an 18-year-old coming from the United States is extremely different from an 18-year-old growing up here in Israel. It's worlds apart. But also we have a lot of I would say most of our soldiers are drafting around 19 or 20. So there's like a little bit of an age gap as well. Sometimes even older than that. I drafted when I was 22. I was the same age as my platoon commander, who was a first lieutenant, and I was a private at the time. So some people do have an issue with that. That it's they're taking orders from somebody that's maybe not as mature as them, or not at the same stage as them. Of course, it's also simply integrating with the culture. You're in a platoon of people who are vastly different. You have people from Tel Aviv, you have people from the periphery, from Yerucham in the south, from the Golan, all over. You have Dati Leumi people, you have non-religious people, and then you're an Ole. You're kind of trying to find your place a little bit, and it can be challenging. It can be lonely as well because of the language. I would say that the language is probably the hardest factor for a lone soldier, and as a result, it's something that we really stress to recruits before they go into the army, to really work on their Hebrew as much as possible in order for them to have as meaningful a service as possible.
Okay, I mean, I think it was you, Mark, who made the point that people are surprised, applicants are surprised to find that so much of the army is not about combat. So is there a tendency for lone soldiers to gravitate towards combat because it's the sort of exciting, I don't know, the kind of sexy thing to do? I don't know, like, or is it more, or are there people that are actually relieved that they can do something that isn't so, I guess, dangerous or intimidating in some way?
I would say that the trend is that combat is the thing that draws most people, because it's what you hear about in the stories, it's what you read about in history, and it's something I think that does have a massive draw. I would say though, in the past several years, We've had, Mark mentioned before, we have more people arriving with specialized degrees, such as in engineering and physics and chemistry. And there's an incredible program the Army is has now incorporated, which allows Olim to use their degree in the Army. So we have people arriving with mechanical engineering degrees that do their 3 months at the Michveh Alon, the Hebrew Ulpan, and then they go and work on a drone program or on in geology, like looking for tunnels that Hezbollah might be digging or Hamas. So we do have a lot of people that are able to use their degree and also to build experience. So it's a really wonderful new thing that we see increasing soldiers doing it every year.
I also want to add to say that it's interesting is that what drives some people, I'm not going to give, I don't have a statistic for this, is that coming to Israel and especially serving in the army makes them much more interesting. They were living very middle class or normal Jewish lives, and they were going to go to college like all their friends. Not only are they serving the Jewish people, which is remarkable, but and the training that they're getting and the knowledge that they're getting, but it opens them up. So they have a dream of serving the army, and Josh is right, all of the stories of the valor and the heroes that we have. But when they look into their plans more, they realize that if they do this in this unit, it's going to be good for them career-wise, and it's good for the army. So people's minds always drift to combat first, but they're often surprised when the rubber hits the road that this might be a great opportunity. And it's no secret that Shmona Matayim, these cyber units are very popular. The spokesperson's unit is very popular because there are people, we have Olim who went on to be advisors to the prime minister after serving in those units. So there are people who are always drawn to those, but it comes down to also an individual choice that people have. And I honestly, when I meet a young person that they want to serve in the army, I often want to make sure that they realize it's often boring. Okay, and that we want it's not always like they see on TV or the news, and we want them grounded onto real life. And we have lots of articles, and Josh and the LSP team run lots of sessions so people understand what's the real life packing list you're going to need, and those ups and downs, so people have a real life expectation of what's happening when they're enlisting in the army.
Absolutely, the Tiyum Tzipiot, we call it in Hebrew. It's basically managing expectations. That it's not going to be like Saving Private Ryan or like Rambo. It's there's a lot of what we call in the army, the American army as well says this a lot, is hurry up and wait. A lot of just waiting around for the next thing to do, and you're just sitting around in the sun most of the time, or cleaning the kitchens. It's right. Somebody has to do it. It's very important, but
especially this week, a lot of cleaning the kitchen this week.
Oh yeah, this is I'm sure. I mean, one thing I did want to ask actually was in terms of the application process for this. How does it work? Because obviously, for Israelis applying for the army just as a matter of course, when they're in their final year of high school, there are things like medical, they have to be assessed medically and also psychologically, because it might be that some people are not psychologically equipped to serve in the army, or certainly not for particular units. Is that something that comes up, that the lone soldiers or people applying wanting to be lone soldiers have to have that kind of assessment as well? So every person that makes Aliyah under the age of 22, they will get at Tzav Giyus, they will get a request to come and do these examinations before they draft to the army. Now, if somebody arrives and they decide, wow, I don't want to wait a year, because the army always gives an Oleh 1 year to acclimate to the country, to learn the language a little bit, to adapt to the culture. If a recruit is insistent on the fact that they speak Hebrew well enough and they want to draft, it's something that they can request to waive, and then they will go in for these assessments. They will do a medical assessment. They will also meet with a psychiatrist to do an assessment to see if they are taking any prescription drugs that they need to be aware of that would limit certain jobs. But I would say that the IDF is extremely accommodating to medical issues and even to psychiatric issues. If it's something that is manageable, something like ADHD or something
something like that. You might not get the job, you might not be a pilot, but they're going to find a job for you. They do try to accommodate as much as possible, because it is something, it is very integral to Israeli society that people do join the army and experience this common experience.
And what about the support system for these soldiers? And I'm talking about both within the army itself, which I suspect is not that great, but also outside, because there's your organization, and I think there's some of us might have heard of the Lone Soldiers Center. I don't know if there's other organizations. There's also the concept of a mishpacha ma'ametzet, an adoptive family. Can you say something about that, with these institutions and organizations that are there to help the lone soldiers?
So I just want to go back again. A lone soldier is basically somebody that's here in Israel serving the army without their parents in Israel. Now, Israel has a very beautiful system that, because it's a conscript army and because it's such a small country, that the soldier will go to the base. They'll do their 2 weeks on base, and they will come back to their family, and the family does the laundry. They will make Shabbat dinner and everything. And this Israeli soldier has nothing really to worry about on the weekends. Now,
I just want to say that we had a Russian soldier who made Aliyah when he was in the Russian army. They got out once a year for the weekend.
Yes, I think we're all learning a little bit about the conditions in the Russian army in recent months. Yes, good. Sorry, go on.
So a lone soldier, it's very different. A lone soldier will spend his 2-3 weeks on base. Will come back from base on a Friday, and it's not, can't throw down the laundry and just go to the beach. You have to do your laundry, you have to go shopping, you have to make sure you have food for Shabbat. You have to take care of any bureaucratic tasks that you need to do before you have to go back to base on this following Sunday. So because of that, there are lots of organizations like Nefesh B'Nefesh, like the Lone Soldier Center, like the base. There's lots of different hayal. There's lots of organizations across the country that are really there to support the soldiers. And now this can take place in many different ways, such as social events, Shabbat dinners that are organized that invite the lone soldiers in a certain city to come and have Shabbat dinner, so that they don't have to worry about going shopping and worrying about cooking. And of course, as you mentioned, we do also have this amazing initiative where we have something called a mishpacha me'ametzet, an adopted family, where a family in Israel decides, that they have maybe space in their home, or they have a space at their table for Shabbat dinner, to have a lone soldier that they adopt, that they take care of, that they write to, that they come to their ceremonies. And it's something really nice. I actually had this when I was in the army. My mishpacha me'ametzet was living in the Golan. And I remember they came to my tekes hashpa'ah when I did my swearing-in ceremony at the Kotel. My family was living in the United States at the time. They weren't able to come because of work. And my mishpacha me'ametzet, they showed up with, a spread like every other Israeli family. And it was something really, really nice to see, because I had experienced a ceremony prior to this where there was nobody there for me. And it's something that I think is very important. And as a result, Nefesh B'Nefesh, we also try to go out to as many of these ceremonies to be able to, to give our soldiers a hug that, may not have a family member, there to cheer them on.
I want to add that a big part of what we do also in the Lone Soldier Program is speaking to the Army officers and commanders about how to have the sensitivity when you have Olim Hadashim from around the country. It's a lot of people have, I just know how to do it, but there's a professionalism that needs to be done with this, and it's amazing to see the response and the level of care that's given. The units, many people don't know this, units have social workers assigned to them. There's a lot of governance to make sure that the mental health of all their soldiers are taken care of, and therefore the extra days off and the extra care that is given is really done to make sure that the mental health is cared. And truly we're actually seeking a way to change the name, because although we feel like it's a heroic decision to make Aliyah, calling them hayalim bodedim perpetuates this idea that they're alone. But there's constantly the saying that hayalim bodedim are never alone, because there is that hug and there's a helping hand. And we work together with all these organizations, so there's not an overlapping of services. So someone doesn't get delivered 2 pizzas to their house because that it would be a waste. We want to make sure that there's enough goodwill going around. And one other comment, I want to praise the IDF because I think it's really remarkable that sometimes the Army gets made fun of for logistics or how waiting in line, or the uniforms are a little sloppy in the IDF, but it's really run with great care, so much so that they actually have a representative who answers questions pre-Aliyah about people's potential length of obligation service, because some people wonder, I'm 22, I entered when I was 21, or some people have health conditions, and people they're struggling with dealt with someone who had Crohn's disease, and they were able to get a definitive answer from the IDF before they made Aliyah, so they knew what was going to happen, and they wouldn't be surprised to find out they don't have an Army service or they do. So there's a lot of concentrated forethought. The IDF is like a corporation. They really want people to be happy. They want to be happy, and they want their soldiers to be happy in good places. So a lot of the work is just trying to make sure that the pieces fall in the right place.
I just want to add on to what Mark just said about the social workers. It's every company, which is about 3 or 4 platoons, has a social worker that's there to take care of all the soldiers that need extra assistance, whether they be lone soldiers that were born in Israel or lone soldiers that are olim. So one of the things I remember from my Army service was I didn't have a washing machine, and it's something like I couldn't afford a washing machine at the time. On an Army salary, it was nothing at the time. It's not so much better now, but it was worse then. Anyway, my social worker arranged to have a washing machine delivered to the house. Like Mark said, we work very closely, Nefesh B'Nefesh FIDF, we work very closely with these social workers. That the first time we had every single lone soldier from the Givati Brigade, it doesn't matter if they were in basic training, in advanced training, on operational rotation, we had every single lone soldier serving in the Givati Brigade come to one place where we got to sit with them and to talk with them and to go over all of the problems that they were facing, and how to improve that, how to bring those comments and those issues with up with the Army, so that they could improve it for the brigade as a whole. And we're going to be doing more and more of these. We have one tomorrow actually with Khatibat Sheva, which is a brigade from the Tank Corps. So this is something that's new, that's happening, and it's really, really tremendous to being able to reach those soldiers like that.
I wanted to ask a question about religious soldiers, partly because in this series we've in 2 of the sessions we've done with that, it's come up with both the Haredim and Dati Leumi soldiers. So I guess my question is, firstly, roughly what percentage of soldiers are religious, and is that a challenge ever in terms of someone coming from abroad, from a religious home, and they're put into this mixed religious, non-religious environment, which I guess is the same for religious Israelis, except that for them it's kind of understood that's what's going to happen, and they grew up with the whole idea of the army in a different way to people from outside Israel. So some religious guy who comes from a religious home from, say, New York, coming into the army is faced with with challenges, maybe also things like, the fact that he's going to have to do things on Shabbat that he wouldn't previously have done because of Pikuach Nefesh and things like that. Is that these challenges that come up, and also the earlier question about numbers?
So I can't give you an exact number, okay, simply because we have many people that are religious, but not outwardly. Perhaps they don't wear a kippah, but they keep Shabbat, they keep kashrut, they put on tefillin every day. So it's very hard to tell, to give an exact number like that. I would say, in terms of religiosity in the army, every single base in the Israeli army, it doesn't matter what base, is 100% kosher. There's 100% kosher food. There's no such thing as a non-kosher base. Right. So there used to be a Druze unit, a unit that was made entirely up of the Druze population, and even this base, everything was 100% kosher, with separate dishes for meat and separate dishes for dairy meals. So that's one of the. It's in the end, it's the IDF, it's the Israeli Defense Forces, it's a Jewish army, it's for the Jewish country.
It's a beautiful part of this. It's a beautiful part of the story. I will say this from North America that we see about 65% of the Olim identify on their application anything but Orthodox. Okay, so we see a large trends of singles who are coming who identify as, again, I refer to that as anything that could be traditional conservative reform. Just Jewish is one of the things on the application. And those who identify as religious often will draft through a program such as a Hesder Yeshiva, which would be great, or another phenomenal program, which is Garin Sabar, which is which is a great program. And Garin Sabar has a religious program in it as well. So they go in with unit. And the habits, as Joshua earlier, a lot of it's cultural. It's not necessarily a religious issue. It's a cultural. They may not be familiar with this is how it's done or what's acceptable, or that there is a person to contact if you have a religious question in the army, that a complaint or a question that you have. So they have to learn that new system. And that's why it's good to have an advisor that can help them.
Okay. I would just want to give like a little anecdote from my first Shabbat in Golani. It was actually something tremendous. I remember I would say that maybe 60 or 70% of my platoon was not religious at all. But on Shabbat, there was nobody playing music. People were on their phones, but nothing was out loud because you needed to respect everybody because it was Shabbat. And I think this is it's something quite beautiful. You see this a lot, and I hear this a lot from my soldiers as well, that they're very surprised that there is the sensitivity, even from non-religious soldiers to religious soldiers. What Mark mentioned as well, the Hesder program it's a fantastic program where people they join the army as a class from a yeshiva, and they go to a specific unit and they join as a platoon. So even though this platoon is religious, it is in a company of regular draftees from the Israeli population. So you do have, a little bit more of this, I guess a yeshiva atmosphere, and also you know the people before. But in the end of the day, when you're on, operational duty in the Judea and Samaria, in Lebanon, Gaza, wherever, you're going to be with the entire company, which is going to be made up of people from across the spectrum.
Okay. All right. I think I've exhausted my initial set of questions. I might have more if our audience members don't provide enough. But so far we've got a few coming in, so I'm gonna turn to some of those. There was a question from Jonathan, who wanted to know about if there are unusual countries that lone soldiers have come from outside of North America and Eastern Europe, and he asked particularly countries that are not particularly friendly to Israel. I mean, and I don't think there aren't that many countries not particularly friendly to Israel that have Jews, but there's a few. So is there anything like that you can recall?
So I don't. In terms of countries that Israel is at low-level war with, I don't want to speak about. But we have about 8 soldiers from Morocco, about 7 from Algeria, 2 or 3 from Tunisia. Interesting place, the Philippines. We have a couple. We had somebody from Vietnam. We have a couple of soldiers from Japan. Really, we really have 3,200 soldiers from 72 countries. Okay, so it's quite a varied group.
This, just from my own curiosity, the soldiers from Japan and Vietnam were Jewish, as in they were eligible for Aliyah. Were they eligible for Aliyah like through a parent or something, or a grandparent? It was a kind of unusual. Wow, fascinating. And Morocco, Morocco, Algeria, that is very interesting. Okay. There's a question from Charlotte who says that she read recently that there are many lone soldiers in debt. Is that correct? And if so, how can they be helped?
Article,
and also I'll add to that why.
The article that I read this I believe it was on the J Post. It was about a week or 2 ago. From what I gathered, it was mostly referring to the Israeli lone soldiers. So soldiers that were born in Israel, that grew up here, that yes, they have taken loans. They turn 18, and the bank tries to push them to take loans, and they are in debt. Yes, we do have a couple of people coming from the States that have student loan debts, but I think that from what I understood from the article, it was mainly focused on Israeli lone soldiers.
Just to clarify, Israeli lone soldiers is Haredim, or just, we're just talking about Haredim, or there's other?
There's lots of people. I had somebody in my unit whose parents they were drug addicts, and he was given up as a child, and he qualified as a lone soldier because he didn't have the support system. And sadly, there are a lot of people like that in Israel. But yes, we also have a huge number of people that grew up in the Haredi community here in Israel. At a certain age, they decide that they want to integrate more to into the wider Israeli society, and then they're cast out of their homes. They're not welcome in their homes anymore, which is really tragic. I mean, it's one thing I do comfort our Olim lone soldiers is that at least they have families somewhere. Somewhere in the world they have people that love them and care about them and that wish them the best. But for lots of Israeli lone soldiers, they don't have their family because of their ideologies.
Yeah, right.
I'd like just to share that we do an event once a year called Yom Sidurim. Some Jews from abroad might think it's a day of getting your siddur, which I first thought of as well. But
yes, that was my first thought.
Yes, it's the errands, and basically lone soldiers get a day every now and then to take care of their bureaucratic needs. And what the Lone Soldier Program in partnership with the IDF did we have a day where all lone soldiers come together. Okay, it's really remarkable. And we bring in different government offices, so instead of running around the city, so that they can convert their driver's license, they can update their address. They'll be able to, sometimes the American embassy came to help some people out. And in fact, the lecture company, which gives a discount to people, was able to come and arrange the discount that they get on their electric bill. And also what made me think of this, Paul, is that some people have debt, and there's actually a few organizations that help soldiers who have debt, sometimes just negotiate it down, or a lawyer who will be able to clarify it's not theirs. So there's always a need just to give that personal attention, because even a new Oleh might not realize that they signed up for a super expensive cell phone plan, even though it's really, really cheap now. And they didn't pay it, and they moved addresses, and it turns out eventually they got them into trouble. But they don't always know who to turn to. So we really aspire to really give all of that attention in one place, and it really makes people really happy. Also, it's on a Thursday, so all the lone soldiers get a long weekend as well. And it's really a day to celebrate them for serving. It's a remarkable experience.
Wow, that's great. So here's a question. It's a little bit related to what Josh said about Israeli lone soldiers who come from sort of troubled family backgrounds. This is a question from Jacqueline, who says, do people ever become lone soldiers? And I think she's talking about people from abroad. People become lone soldiers to escape something, that they're sort of coming to Israel to be lone soldiers because there's something they're sort of trying to get away from in there.
Yes, absolutely. I mentioned before briefly the statistics of soldiers and where they're from. Just in the last year, we've had a huge surge in lone soldiers coming from Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine because of the war. Yes, of course, they're trying to escape the war there. We have also one of the leading motivators for French lone soldiers is anti-Semitism in France, that it's becoming untenable to live there, and that the experience of a young Jew in France is something it's becoming impossible. And so one of the reasons that they're coming here is really to escape that. I had somebody when I was in Mikveh Alon in my Hebrew course. He said the reason he was from France. He said the reason that he decided to come to Israel to join the army was because he was mugged at gunpoint because he was wearing a Magen David in Paris.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it's I guess in a way there's something very how can I put it? There's something quite classically Zionist about coming to join coming to Israel to join the IDF as a response to being the kind of the sort of quote unquote helpless Jew in the diaspora. You mentioned, Josh, about people who are escaping the war in Ukraine. Of course, those escaping from Russia are escaping from being drafted into the Russian army to fight in that war.
Well, similarly in Ukraine as well. Like right now, if you're male between the ages of 18 and 40, I believe, or 45, you're not allowed to leave the country anymore. So we have every year a lone soldier is entitled to 30 days to fly home and visit their family. It's called the Miuchedet Chul. It's one of the beautiful benefits that we have for lone soldiers. And because of this ruling in Ukraine stating that a male between the ages of 18 and 45 is not allowed to leave the country, we've arranged with the army to allow these soldiers to fly to an intermediary country such as Germany or Hungary, and they'll meet their family there so that they can spend time with them.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Svi Berg asks, does the IDF provide housing solutions for lone soldiers, and do they get any extra money because of their additional expenses?
So there are a couple of different housing options for a lone soldier. The first one is if you want to rent an apartment with maybe a couple of friends of yours, the IDF will supplement your income with 1,700 shekels. It was just raised actually a couple of weeks ago from 1,300 to 1,700 shekels a month. In addition, lone soldiers don't pay housing tax, and they also pay only 50% of. So that's the first option. Second option is that they can arrange a place on a kibbutz for them to live. Third is mishpacha me'ametzet. Lots of people they want to live with an adopted family. They don't want to have the headache of bills and finding an apartment. The fourth one is a bet ha'chayal. Bet ha'chayal is kind of like an army hostel. It's in every big city. There's a bet ha'chayal where soldiers can come and stay. And it's a little bit more temporary. I wouldn't advise that for lone soldiers to live there their whole service, but it's a good place to start off at. And the last one is something called Dirat Alach, and Dirat Alach is something incredible. These are apartments spread out throughout the country that are furnished, and every week the army restocks the fridge. So all you have to do as a lone soldier, you show up with your suitcases, you hang up your clothes in the closet, and you're home. That's it. So you don't have to worry about buying furniture, signing contracts. It's 100% through the army.
Wow, that's a great service. Because you mentioned the mishpacha me'ametzet again, the adoptive families. I want to just say, because I neglected to do before, for anyone in our Zoom audience that is interested, those of you living in Israel, that is interested in being one of those adoptive families, can Josh or Mark, can you tell us how they can go about doing that, and maybe write in the chat a link or an email address that's relevant to that?
Great. So we have a volunteer that works with us, and his job is really to pair up families with lone soldiers. We have, lone soldiers very often write to us and say, "Hey, I'm serving in Tzanchanim and the paratroopers, and I would really love to have an adopted family in the area of Herzliya." Okay, and so then our volunteer will go through his list and try to find a family that is suitable for this person. It might even be that the soldier asks, "Oh, I'm religious, so I'd like to have a Shomer Shabbat home." So we'll do our best to try to find somebody that's going to really fit what that person is looking for. I'm just going to drop the email address of our volunteer. He's called Ariel. He was a lone soldier as well. He's from Peru.
I just want to also add that some people may be familiar with these stories from about 10 or 15 years ago of soldiers fundraising for bulletproof vests or warm fleeces, or saying that they're hungry and deliver pizzas to us. This was a stories that went around beforehand. The Army has cracked down on those type of fundraisers, and they've decided to become a little more professional and say that we're gonna up the supplies that we're giving and they don't like the charity fundraising that they're doing, and has actually leaned on us and Nefesh B'Nefesh and our lone soldier program to make sure that there are times that we do send gifts out to soldiers and care packages, and as Josh mentioned, to go to techises and to make sure that people get to be able to get those touch points as well. So they're trying to professionalize also these types of opportunities. You can't go on those VIP tours giving a tour to the bases anymore, if anyone's been on one of those before, as the things have gotten more serious, especially with social media now with regard to security. So a lot of our work is really connecting those small needs of people. It's not the big stuff. It's sometimes visiting people in the hospital who are recovering from an injury, or people who have something's happening abroad and they need to get out. A lot of it is that problem solving for those people that don't have a mom or a sister or brother that's able to just run that errand or get them that thing they need done.
Okay, that's very encouraging to hear. So those people in our Zoom audience, if you are interested, please do make a note of the email of Ariel's email that Josh has just written into the chat. There's a follow-up question, Josh, from your comment about the soldiers coming from Ukraine. From Jonathan, he says, have any Ukrainian lone soldiers that you know of sought to return to fight for Ukraine?
So the ones that came here that fled the war, generally no. But there was a Ukrainian in my he was another lone soldier in my platoon. And I saw just, a couple of weeks after the war started that he had gone back to fight. So, and also, even when I first joined the army, I joined the army in 2013, and Russia invaded Crimea in I believe it was February 2014.
2014, yeah.
And I remember at the time I was just finishing up Mikhailon, and we had a lot of Ukrainian soldiers that decided to go back to fight.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay. And Mark has just put his own email address in, mark@nbn.org.il, for questions about NBN's work for lone soldiers. So make a note of that as well, because I know that people may have questions that they don't want to ask here or don't have time to ask here. Here's an interesting question from Lily. We've talked mainly about so far. I think you've been referring to soldiers making aliyah, I guess either staying or I guess in some cases going back, but basically making aliyah. What about people who volunteer, who are not coming as Israeli citizens? Who are those? Is that a thing? Who are those people? Is it because I assume these are people that already know in advance that they're going back to their country of origin, probably to go to college or whatever. What can you tell us about those people?
So sometimes it's because they have the intention to go back. But in my case, I was a volunteer as well. I didn't make Aliyah before I joined the army, and the reason was because I wanted to join the army as fast as possible. And if you do it through the volunteer path, that track, you don't have to go through the Aliyah process, which can sometimes take several months. If you go through the volunteer track, you can. In my case, I arrived and landed in Israel, and 3 weeks later, I was in uniform. Now, I think I haven't heard of something like that happen since I started working here. It's usually about 2 months because they want to, screen you and make sure you're, 100% ready for it. But I guess I'm an example that I was a volunteer. I did have the intention to go back. I was studying mechanical engineering at the time at NYU. I had the intention to go back to finish my studies. But while I was in the army, I really enjoyed it. And I decided to sign more time to go to the commander's course. And I ended up staying in Israel afterwards because it's my place. It's the place that I want to be. And we have a lot of people that do that as well, that decide, that initially believe that they're going to go back. Very often they have, it's because of their parents. Their parents wish them to finish their studies or to study in their home countries. But as time progresses here, and as they integrate more into the Israeli society, their outlook shifts a little bit, and they decide to make a life here in Israel.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. And are there positions that are restricted to people that don't have Israeli citizenship, haven't taken
Yes.
Israeli citizenship?
So if you don't have Israeli citizenship, you're pretty much limited to combat.
Interesting. That's interesting.
You can't be anywhere near an IDF computer because you don't have a security clearance and you don't have citizenship. So,
sorry, Josh, the sound went a little bit there. You can't, just at the crucial point, you can't do what?
Sorry. So somebody that does not have Israeli citizenship will not be able to work a job that grants them access to an IDF computer. Okay, because they need to have a security clearance, a basic level of security clearance. It's not something tremendously high, but the basic requirement for that clearance is Israeli citizenship. So if you're a volunteer, if you're coming as a volunteer, it's generally with the knowledge that you're going to be serving in a combat unit.
You're also service is a shorter period of time, which is also a tempting thing for many people not planning to stay. So if you do want to serve longer, or you want to do something different, the incentive is you have to sign on for a longer commitment. So that also draws people in for a longer service or aliyah.
So someone who's coming as a volunteer without making aliyah would do how long? Roughly
18 months.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And for those that are coming for the full thing, I assume the vast majority of them, because they've made aliyah, they stay in Israel, or there's quite a significant number that go back afterwards. I mean, speaking personally, a good friend of mine from Ulpan, actually, who's quite a bit younger than me, when we were at Ulpan together, and he went to the army. And then I think his intention was actually to stay in Israel, but because of various things, and I think his father was sick, and he went back to the States. Is that something that happens a lot, or?
It does happen. It does happen. Like, things do come up, family issues back home, studies, things like that. It's something that we've implemented over the past years. We've put a real focus on the transition from the army life back into civilian life. It's something we put on. We have a seminar once a month in Tel Aviv where we invite everybody that's getting out of the army in the 3-month period, and we basically try to educate them and prepare them as much as possible for life in Israel as a civilian. We call it sometimes the aliyah shniya, the second aliyah, because you're in this beautiful system in the army where somebody's telling you what to wear, when to wake up, what to do, what
free
to
bus
eat,
travel.
Free bus travel, all these things you don't really need to worry about too much. But then once you're out of the army, all of a sudden you have to find a job. You need to understand, the Israeli pay stubs and taxes and how, Social Security works and all these different things. So because of that, we found that one of the reasons why people were going back is because they didn't have a grasp on these issues. So we're trying with something that we're doing now. We do once a month. We have all the lone soldiers get together that are getting out in a 3-month period, and we try to educate them as much as possible for them to have a successful life here in Israel as a civilian.
They call the ages between 18 and 22 the Odyssey years, because people go on these journeys and they wander around. So it's not uncommon for people to say that they're going to go back, or they promise that they had a scholarship that they want to do. So there are people who go. It's hard to pin down each person, and it's hard to get the statistics because some of those people get their degree and they come back afterwards. They never break their toshavut. So there definitely is a fluidity. But as Josh said, we put a strong focus, especially even before COVID. So this is already about 4 years ago, to make sure that it wasn't for a lack of services or recognition for people to say what to do. The word that we now call this is adulting, is how to be an adult in Israel. It's hard for any Oleh to know where do you need to go. So this targeted training, this targeted help to make people make the transition. Also, there are great courses offering people how to get jobs quick. That has been significant in helping make sure that people want to change. But it's a dynamic age that brings people, and people also have many dreams they also want to follow.
Right. No, I guess by definition, someone who's making such a sort of radical leap from their ordinary life at that age is someone who's on some kind of self-exploration journey. So it's maybe not surprising that, as you say, everything's a little bit up in the air in terms of where they're going to go next and how things turn out. And I also
think one of the things that changed, Paul, is the IDC. The IDC becoming now it's got a fancier name,
Reifman
University, which has put pressure on Israeli universities to offer many more English-speaking programs, even at Tel Aviv University. So the option of people saying, "Oh, I have to go back because I speak Hebrew, but I don't want to read in Hebrew," has opened up options to say Israel has become much more competitive. The job market, lots of things have allowed people to feel closer to their family. And now, because of our phones, than it was being like, wow, I'm never going to see my family except once a year on a trip. So that has also eased people in their decision about where they're going to build their second aliyah, this next experience they're having.
That's very interesting. Yeah, for those people that don't know, Reifman University, which got university status, I think, a couple of years ago, was previously the IDC and the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya, and they they were offering, I think for a while, have been offering undergraduate degrees in English, right? Okay, there's a question here. It's a little bit different from Shmuel, who says, what can you say about collaboration with municipal authorities for resolution problems of lone soldiers? Do municipalities help in any way?
Mark, you wanna talk about Yom Sidurim?
Sure. Usually people bend over backwards to help a lone soldier. So again, I mentioned this day that we have errands day for soldiers. So we bring the major municipalities there, and they come and someone's like, oh, I have an Arnona bill. I have a municipal tax bill that I didn't pay. They're like, okay, get me this form, okay, which isn't always easy for a soldier, and we'll wipe it away because they can't just make it go. It's a bureaucratic process. So the municipalities are always willing to do it. I mean, the people from the Interior Ministry are always willing to go the extra mile when they know that you're serving the country. This is true for girls who are doing Shut Leumi. This is good for soldiers. When they realize that you made Aliyah, they're like, wow. If you're in service, they will do that. So it's important to realize, hopefully people who visit Israel know that everything's negotiable. But if you're having an issue with the municipality, you have to go, either they have a person that deals with Olim, the major municipalities do that. You can always call our Lone Soldier Program, but just to push that advocacy, because they are very solution focused on soldiers. And if someone's in need or has a problem, they really want to make it go away.
I would just add to that this last year was the first time that the state of Israel recognized Lone Soldier Week. It was Lone Soldier Appreciation Week, like you have in America. You have Black History Month and Asian Pacific History Month, things like that. So we had in Israel, we had Lone Soldier Week, where there were signs in various cities celebrating lone soldiers, items on the radio, things on TV, all these things trying to expose the greater Israeli public to this incredible sacrifice that so many young Olim are doing.
There's a question here, something we haven't really touched on actually. Linda wants to know about female soldiers, lone female soldiers. What sort of numbers are we talking about? Where do they go?
So it's very, very close. It's almost 50-50. It's about 48%. Yeah, it's very, very close. And we have female soldiers going to combat units. There are several border units like the Karakal battalion, Bardilas, and Ariot HaYarden. These are co-ed units that are protecting our country's borders on a day-to-day basis. If you're looking at Times of Israel articles in the last 2 years, all of the weapons seizing and the drug busts that are coming from Jordan and Egypt, this is all these co-ed units. And they're even starting pilot programs for tank units as well that are going to be completely female units. And yeah, I mean, it's really incredible. I think that Israel is doing really a lot to try to integrate and try to have as much equality as possible when it comes to reaching certain units.
Okay, I think we'll finish there, but I want to give Mark an opportunity to say a few words at the end, maybe just to sort of plug a little more of the great work that you're doing at Nefesh B'Nefesh on this issue.
Thank you, Paul. I mean, it's an honor for us to be part of this Begin Heritage Center. I mean, Menachem Begin's vision and leadership as a prime minister really was an inspiration for me personally. His picture was in my home growing up, and it's really with this in mind that Nefesh B'Nefesh really has this idea of Aliyah of choice, that we treat Aliyah differently, realizing that people have a choice to stay in their community, move somewhere else, or decide to choose to move to Israel. And to do that, we want to give advice and resources to people so that they can be successful. And that has led to a retention rate of Aliyah that used to be in the 80s, about 60% of people leaving within 2 years, that less than 10% are leaving. And that includes some of these army soldiers who are floating around. And that really goes to our secret to having people like Josh and myself and be able to went through this experience, be able to give them up-to-date information and be problem solving. So we're always seeking to improve. The dynamics are always changing. It's easier than ever to make Aliyah. It doesn't mean that it's easy, okay? Even though it's easier, the service is really, really hard. it is hard to be away from family. It is hard to be able to keep that concentration and to not be able to travel when you want to. And this is what our lone soldiers are going through. So we really put a tremendous amount of effort at the FIDF Lone Soldier Program to make sure that every soldier has what they need so they can be safe, and that we can enjoy that safety. So it's with that in mind that it's really it's a privilege. It's a privilege for us to be supportive of the 3,200 lone soldiers currently protecting us, and we appreciate all of our supporters and anyone who's interested in supporting us or people who need resources or people interested in serving in the Army. Please contact us, because we believe that small information can make a big difference. And be it whether just connecting to a family or making sure you get to the right unit, it can have all the difference. And I like to always say that we hope that even for those here who made Aliyah, you should continue to be Ba'aliyah. You should continue to feel that sense of being uplifted, and we should be able to have times of peace that most of the soldiers in the IDF are bored. That's a wish I have.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mark and Josh, for giving us your time this evening and explaining to us the great work that you're doing, the work that I think all of us appreciate, because everyone on this call, whether we live in Israel or not, I think appreciate the IDF, and therefore we appreciate the work that you're doing in helping those people who are contributing so much to the IDF. And of course, it's the Zionist in the most direct way, the sort of Zionist ethos of helping people to make Aliyah. So that's great. I've just written in again Mark's email and the email of Ariel, who's the person you contact if you want to be connected to soldiers to be as an adoptive family. This is the final part of this series that we've been doing. The entire series is on our YouTube channel. Go to the Begin Center YouTube channel and you'll see all the previous 4 episodes if you haven't seen those. I'm going to if you're not on my mailing list, then please email me, paulg@begincenter.org.il, to be on my mailing list and get all the information about our English events, both on Zoom and live. We're taking a break for Pesach, but we'll be back after that. I wish everyone a Pesach Sameach v'Kasher, and let everyone I hope everyone has a great Chag, and I'll see you all virtually, at least in a couple of weeks. Bye everyone. Bye.